Well, I'm delighted to say that Andrew Boff joins us now. A very good morning to you. Just in terms of Suella Braverman, she plays incredibly well to the core vote of the Conservative Party. She's saying migration needs to be got under control. We're seeing increasing numbers. It is slightly lower than this time last year. She also went on to talk about LGBT people coming to this country. The line that she used, and I thought it was important actually. She said you need to differentiate between persecution and discrimination, but you clearly disagreed.
Well, what I disagree with is her deciding to focus on that initial statement that she made, which was quite a few days ago, of focusing just on gay people, for goodness sake, as though they were the problem. I mean, the problem with migration is, of course, her department has been pretty poor in processing those asylum applications. And if somebody is using an excuse to get into this country, then you need that to be investigated quickly. And they are just not doing it quickly enough. And hence we have this huge backlog of people who are seeking asylum. And we should remind ourselves as well, is the majority of people who seek asylum and do get assessed are found to have had a justified reason for seeking asylum.
But that's also because our threshold is much lower than the rest of Europe. The fact is, you could argue that she is trying to do something about it. We have the Rwanda plan, we're waiting for the Supreme Court, she has the Bibi Stockholm, she's got Scampton, she's got Wethersfield. She is trying, she's being thwarted. And we've heard this morning many of the papers talking about many people want to leave the ECHR. That's how angry they are.
Well, leaving the ECHR is not going to happen. It's a fundamentally British measure, which we pushed to the rest of Europe. It's something that actually talks about our British values of justice, individual rights. And so that's not going to happen. But people like talking about it because they like blaming other people for their own problems. You know, the tone of her contribution, and the reason I went into the hall is because I don't necessarily believe everything the media tells us. I wanted to hear it for myself, and the tone was appalling. It was about treating victims as perpetrators. It was like a feeding frenzy on the vulnerable. And I don't, you know, we're as a party, we're better than that. And you say that she got a lot of support from the core vote. You know, with all the messages that I've been getting from Conservative Party members, I don't think that support for that kind of rather mean bullying is as widespread as people might think.
There did seem to be, though, an awful lot of support for Suella Braverman in the room there. You with your...
Well, it was a self-selecting audience.
Yeah, and I guess you were in a minority with your heckle, which I have to say wasn't much of a heckle, was it really, Andrew? It was more of a mutter under your breath. But then you look at the Prime Minister's speech, and he talked about the gender debate, and he said a man is a man, a woman is a woman. And that probably generated the biggest cheer during his speech as well. I wonder what you made of the tone of the conference and the party's apparent shift towards the right.
Well, look, we've got so much to offer as the Conservative Party. We've clearly got the better economic policies than any of the other parties. We're the ones who are going to be able to get us out of the implications of the pandemic. We're a party that believes in civil liberties, that believes in individuals being able to make decisions about their own life. So when we use these rather transphobic tropes about man is a man and woman is a woman...
Well, it's also biologically true. I mean, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. That's sex. She was essentially what Rishi Sunak is trying to say is biologically you can be male or you can be female.
You can talk over me if you want, but actually that's never been true. There have always been grey areas for a very tiny proportion of the population. Just saying a man is a man and a woman is a woman hasn't been true, and it hasn't been true for hundreds of years. And because there's been intersex people, there's been people who've transitioned into the gender that they weren't assigned to, and that's been going on for years. And there've been no problems with that. One of our greatest travel writers was Jan Morris, who was assigned male at birth and then decided to transition in the 60s. And there were no problems. There were no problems with her. So why is it that we have to use these tropes in order to stir up hatred amongst people who've probably never realised they've met a trans person?
Let's just move on. You said the Conservative Party is the best party to win the general election. Now, clearly, inflation is way out of control. It was this government that introduced furlough. It is this government that had quantitative easing, or under this government. And also, just in terms of the policies that he's rolling out, it seems to me the more conservative the Conservative Party becomes, the better they do in the poll ratings.
Well, poll ratings have never really been a very accurate determination of the outcome of a general election. And yes, the Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor, introduced furlough. Should he have not?
Well, I mean, it's a question. I would argue they shouldn't have locked us down in the first place.
Well, that's a whole different argument.
Well, I mean, you could also
that's a whole different argument.
Well, you could also argue that it's also
that's a whole different argument. And if you yourself want to put you in a very small minority of people who watch that, that's fine. But that was certainly not the prevailing view amongst all the parties at the time of the pandemic.
Andrew, can I ask you about politics today and the by-election result in Scotland, Rutherglen and Hamilton West? The prediction, based on the results we've seen today, that Labour could win 40 seats at the general election after an SNP meltdown. There's some serious questions to be asked within the SNP, but there are also some serious questions to be asked for the Conservative Party today, aren't there?
No, not really. The one thing I've learned from a long time in politics is that by-elections teach you absolutely nothing.
And just in terms of that, do you think the Conservative Party can actually turn this round? When you look at
absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely we can. Oh, absolutely we can.
How?
And I'm very confident that we're going to go on to a victory at the general election when it comes, because people will start to realise that the vacillation of the Labour Party, that just seems to spend all its time following us, you know, they stand on principle for a certain thing, and then as soon as the Conservatives come forward with an economic proposal, they pretty soon follow on. And Labour voters will start to think, well, why should I vote for an image of the Conservative Party when actually I could vote for the Conservative Party? So I am actually persuaded that we're going to win the next general election. You know, I've seen so many instances of where the party has been behind in the polls just a year or so before a general election, and then we went on to win. 92, for example, was a marvellous example of how we turned it round. And we turned it round when we appealed to a broad base of people.
Is Rishi the man to do that then, Andrew? There's not a lot of time left. Is Rishi the man to turn it around?
Yes, there's examples in the past. If we can stick to our economic credentials of putting as much money in people's pockets as possible and stop picking on minorities just to get a few cheap claps at a Conservative Party conference, then we can turn it round. If we focus entirely on the culture wars, then we will lose. And that's why I needed to speak out.
Andrew Boff, thank you very much.